Hello, I'm John Higgins and welcome to my channel. And today I'd like to bring to you a special organ demonstration video from Newland Uniting Church in Victor Harbor, South Australia. And this of course is my former hometown, and this is the church where I was married to my beautiful wife Eliza. So it's lovely to be back here, and I'm very excited to be able to share this organ demonstration with you. And the first thing that an organist notices when they come to this console is a lot of white plastic tape over the top of the stop draw knobs. And of course that's a great disappointment to the organist, as you've heard the old joke that an organist is like an old cart horse always looking for another stop, as the old dad joke goes. And unfortunately, in this situation, the organ was planned in 2 stages. And so part 1 was completed, and about just over half of the organ is here. And part 2 of the expansion and completion of the instrument was planned to be completed, but has not occurred for many years. And so that means a lot of the stops have white tape on them, which means that the rank doesn't exist. So you have to be very careful when you come here to take note of which stops are working. So approximately half of the grate's working. There's about just over a third or a half of the pedal department's working, and most of the swell. So the swell is really the backbone of this instrument. It's a wonderful division. But another quirk that the organist must watch out for on this instrument is because of the spatial constraints inside the swell chamber, some of the ranks of pipes only go down to tenor C. And so if you're playing in the lower registers of the keyboard, then you have to be careful, because the balance completely disappear and you won't hear any notes sounding. And likewise, if you're coupling the swell down to the pedal, you have to be careful, because the bottom octave, when you're playing the pedals, you won't hear anything, because the ranks don't go down past tenor C. So that's something to be wary of. On the swell division, we'll start with the foundations. So we have a lovely open diapason, and we'll hear the contrast between the great open diapason and the swell. And this is very typical romantic English style open diapason. It's very big and tubby and round, not overly bright, but it carries a real body and presence to it, and is really adds some weight to the sound when you're playing on this instrument. So the swell open diapason is enclosed, and we'll begin with that. And I thought, seeing as we're at this time of this Christmas season, I would use some of the Christmas carols to help with the demonstration. Now the great open diapason. Go to 4-foot pitch. On the swell we have a 4-foot Gems horn, and on the grate the principal 4-foot. Here we are on the swell. Full and round sound. And on the swell we have a 2-foot flageolet, which is really a flute stop, but in this case it's voiced rather brightly, and we don't have any upper work, so there are no 2-foot 15ths or mixtures on either the swell or the grate of this organ, because that was meant to be completed in stage 2. So the flageolet really carries the load of having to be the brightness of the swell chorus, and the grate doesn't go any higher than the 4-foot principal. So what I'll do now is I'll couple the swell to the grate manual, and then you'll get to hear that sound. We'll add some pedalling now. So firstly, the swell 8, 4 and 2. So that was the 2 choruses coupled together there at the conclusion. A lovely foundation sound, and very good for hymn playing and other repertoire. Certainly very much in the romantic style with heavy, weighty chorus sounds, but without any upper work to add brightness. Let's have a look now at the flute sounds, and this organ has some beautiful flutes. So first we'll begin with the Lieblich Gedackt on the swell, and obviously this is fully enclosed, so we are able to regulate the volume as required. And a beautiful piece to illustrate the flutes is In Dulce Jubilo by Johann Michael Bach. And for the purposes of this demonstration, I want to show the difference in character between the treble and the bass sections of the keyboard and the rank. So here we have the wonderful 8-foot Lieblich Gedackt on the swell. Up an octave. Then if I add, we'll now look at the 4-foot walled flute on the swell. Play down an octave so you can hear that sound. So that was the 4-foot walled flute down an octave, so you can compare it with the 8-foot Lieblich Gedackt. At its standard pitch, you can hear it develops a lot more brightness and beautiful character. And then adding the 2 together, it's a wonderful combination, it's very useful. On the grate we have an 8-foot Clarabelle flute, which is a very large scale open flute made of wood, and it has a real presence and a chiff to it. It can sound a little dark in its the middle register, but when played in the tenor range, it almost takes on a harmonic flute sound to it, which is quite useful for solos. So again, I'll demonstrate first at the standard 8-foot pitch. But if I then play up an octave, listen to the difference of the sound. Wonderful sound indeed. Also on the swell we have some wonderful celeste or string stops, which are very useful. So we have a violin gamba at 8 foot, which I'll just illustrate that here with a block chord with the box fully open, just a C chord, and then it has an unda maris, which is Latin for little wave. And when the unda maris pipes are tuned slightly sharp or flat relative to the standard violin gamba, and it creates an undulating effect of the two sets of pipes being out of tune. You'll hear that now. Wonderful wave effect, and if I close the box, you'll hear the volume possibilities. Really does come down to a whisper. Another possibility we have is the flute celeste, which is rather unusual. So we have an 8 foot flute celeste, and you'll hear again, this is the Lieblich Gedacht on its own at 8 foot pitch. The flute celeste, and the two combined a very slow interference there creates a real luscious wavy sound, and that can really add quite an effect, which most organs I've played will have the celeste on the string ranks, and having the flute is quite an interesting option. It completely changes the effect of the celeste. So I'll begin first here. We'll take Silent Night, and we'll begin with the string celeste. Now we'll have the flute celestes. Now all of them together. Wonderful combination that is quite unique, having the flute and the string celestes. Of course, there is a tremulant as well that can be applied to all of those. And the tremulant is actually quite fast, so it creates a completely different effect again, and would probably be best used, for example, with the flutes on their own without the celeste, but it is there as an option. We also have a Nazard 2 2/3 stop on this organ. Now, I don't know whether this was originally an independent rank. As all the organists would know, the Nazard 2 2/3 mutation stop is actually playing up an octave and a fifth. So if we take piano pitch 8 foot, middle C, the next C above is 4 foot pitch, the C above that is 2 foot pitch, and 2 2/3 is in between those. And so you get quite a curious nasally sound. But when I draw the Nazard at the moment, playing middle C, it appears to be sounding at 4-foot pitch. So if I choose the walled flute and the Gems horn at 4-foot pitch, I add the Nazard, it's at the same pitch. So I'm not sure what may have happened there, but it can be added to the chorus and it still fits in at 4-foot. Next we come to the reeds, and first we have a Vox Humana, which is rather different to many of the Vox Humanas I've heard, and it's very, very softly voiced indeed. And it really would have to be used in very careful circumstances to be a good effect. So and you can also hear that it's outside of the swell box, so there's no volume regulation possible. And also, unusually, the tremulant doesn't apply to that wind chest. So when I pull out tremulant, it doesn't work on that wind chest, whereas if I pick the 8-foot flute, so that's the Vox Humana. The 8-foot oboe is a wonderful stop. It's full of character. Just on its own, it has it's quite an edge to it, and is a really lovely sound. Here you have it. If we pad that out with the Lieblich Gedackt 8-foot and the violin gamba, it adds more body to it. Of course, it also has wonderful solo possibilities. So if I use the 8-foot Dulciana on the grate, this is possibly one of the most useful and critical stops on the organ at the moment, because we have all of these wonderful soft colours on the swell, and the only means to accompany them really is the Dulciana on the grate, because the Clarabelle flute is large scale and it's fairly heavy. So I'll illustrate that for you and how you can hear the balance and what's necessary. Whereas if I use the Clarabelle flute, it's too heavy. With the Dulciana, it really balances quite nicely and is very effective. And the oboe also makes a wonderful additional counterpart to the foundations on the swell. So if we take the 8-foot open diapason, Lieblich Gedackt, violin gamba, 4-foot Gems horn, and 2-foot flageolet on its own for a moment. Then add the oboe. add some colour to the chorus as well. Next we come to the larger reeds, which are very exciting and interesting. The 8-foot cornopian on the swell is fully contained in the swell box, and so if I start with the box closed, open the box, and so that's very, very handy that you can adjust the volume and achieve different dynamics. So on its own, it can be useful for a fanfare. Again, one thing to note is that the lower octave drops off back to the oboe as its bass, so tenor C drops off completely. So again, you have to be aware of that, especially when it's coupled to the pedal. The oboe and the cornopian together make quite a useful horn sound and an alternative to the trumpet. So the trumpet is unenclosed, and that's really resides on the great wind chest, but is playable from both manuals. So here's the cornopian and the oboe on the swell. And the 8-foot trumpet on the great. The 8-foot trumpet in the bass. It drops down to the oboe bass for the lower octave. So let's also look at it in its solo possibilities. Trumpet voluntary, wonderful and well-known piece. If I use the swell, cornopian and oboe together now, and the open diapason on the great. Whoops. Be helpful if the trumpet, if I put the trumpet back in on the great. There's a trap for organists. Or the trumpet on its own. Both of them are lovely possibilities. The other important function of the cornopian is adding power and brilliance to the chorus. So I've already discussed that the great only goes up to the 4-foot principal, and that's it. And the swell has the 2-foot flageolet. So if I pull out now the swell chorus and the great chorus, just on its own, I'm also going to add the pedal open wood and board on 16 foots and the pedal couplers, and then I'll just I'll play without the cornopian, and then we'll add it as a chorus reed so you can hear the difference that it makes. Now I add the cornopian. inclusions of pieces or repertoire that really needs some body and excitement, the cornopian is a wonderful and essential addition to the chorus because it relies on the reed to add the brightness to the sound. It is possible to utilise the trumpet as a chorus reed, but that would be very rare occasions indeed, because it is a fairly bright and dominating trumpet that can be a bit in your face. So it would certainly be sparingly used as a chorus reed. It could possibly be added on top of full organ for perhaps a final chord, but it really does dominate. And finally, to conclude, the pedal, as I said, it has a board on, which unless you've got a really good stereo system, you may not hear that. Open wood 16. But it really relies on the couplers, so if I add full great and the swell chorus. Again, one of the peculiarities to work around is the 8-foot trumpet is also available on the pedal, so it's available on the swell and the great and the pedal at 8-foot pitch, but doesn't go down below Tennessee, as I said. So if you listen to the chorus here, so it loses that bottom octave, but there is a 4-foot clarion, which is an extension rank of the 8-foot trumpet. And because the pedal is a shorter compass, it effectively gives a 4-foot reed across the entire pedal compass. So again, I'll begin at the E above Tennessee on the pedal board. That is also a possibility to add, but certainly not something that really balances, for example, in a Bach fugue where you're wanting to bring out the pedal line. It's much, much too loud, and without mixtures on the choruses, it doesn't work, it doesn't balance. There's also a 10 2/3 quint. Firstly, I'll just play a few notes without it so you can hear the difference. Then with the quint. The idea there is it has the ranks are basically sounding at a fifth, which when the harmonics of the waves combine, it creates the sensation or the harmonic series of a 32-foot, which on top of full organ, it can work, but not always convincing, so it has to be used with care. So the full pedal, if I pull out the all of the working stops, so there you have it. And to conclude, let's just have a short excerpt from Hark the Herald Angels Sing on full organ for Christmas. have it, the organ of Newland Memorial Church, Victor Harbour. I hope you've enjoyed that short organ demonstration, and please stay tuned to my channel for more videos to come. I will have some interesting news to share and some more musical experiences for you to enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye.